where the wire go through the resistor onto the anode section of the LED. You can reverse it basically, so you can have the resistor shorted through ground and just connect it to the LED.
I think I got what you're saying.
Yeah, but
You could have it on
it's
either
essentially the
side.
same.
Yeah.
Yes. And you're absolutely right, because it's in circuit, then the resistance, it doesn't matter on either side that it's connected to.
You also can take the LED and put it to 5 volts. Will also work, but inverted.
You can. So we have this set up, and we're going to use a decade counter. For this particular scenario. So anybody want to describe what a decade counter is? Because anybody new probably hasn't messed with old technology. A decade counter is it receives a clock signal, a pulse, if you will, and every time it receives a pulse, it changes the output that it gives based on that pulse. So it's basically a counter that counts to 10. Every time it receives a pulse signal, it counts +1. So the first pulse will put it from 0 to 1, and then 1 to 2 on the next pulse, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and we cycle all the way up until we basically run out of pins. So that's 10, and then we start to count all over again. All right, so let's connect our power up. Any questions or comments thus far?
Well, if you only connect the count pin, don't you somehow need to know when it is back to 0 to sync it with the microcontroller?
You will, but we're not worrying about that part right now. We're just driving pins high. That'll be most likely in the next step. So we got clock enable. Everything else should be okay. I feel like I'm missing one pin. All right. So now we bring out a bunch of LEDs. See if I can fit them all on here if I have to use another board.
Data sheet.
And all of resistors will be at 220. I wish we could copy paste in real life. Anybody else have that notion? A copy of paste or Control Z? I'd love to invent both of those. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Go ahead, one more, I guess. I'm going to squeeze it all on this board. There we go. 10. All right. Let's get rid of our old LED. Let's reconnect our clock enable pin. So let's see here. We should be able to do this on each one of the LEDs.
Oh, and fun fact, in case if nobody knows this, the holes in the breadboard are referred to as buses.
Very good point. All right, so we have, if you look at the chip pins, they're labeled with their outputs in this sketch. If not, we'd look at an actual data sheet to find the outputs if you don't know them already. And we should have a VCC hiding up here. We also have a clock enable pin and a clock pin. So the clock enable pin, if I remember correctly, is drawed low on a 4017. If not, then we'll blow something up and have to invert it, but I believe it's low. And so now we need to connect our clock pin. Our clock pin is the pin that's going to be running to the Arduino pin 13. Get all these lines halfway straight. All right, now we need to power this whole board. So I'm going to pull 5 volts off of the Arduino and bring it all the way over into the top rail. The bottom rail is not connected. I don't think we'll need it, but if we do, we can connect that up here in a minute. We're also bringing our ground over to this side. I'm marking the ground wires as black and the 5 volt or positive wires as red. We'll also need our ground on this bottom side. So you connect a jumper from the top side and bring it down to the bottom side. Now let's do some cleanup. All right. So we have our clock pin running to the chip, and now we need to connect up all the individual LEDs. So we're going to find pin 1 right here, run it all the way down to the first resistor, and we're changing its color to turquoise. Then we do the same thing with pin 2. Pin 3. Four, like we're missing a 5. There's our 5. Nope. So like in real life, it wants to jump to the wrong one. All right, so then we got our pin 6. I believe it's down. Yep, there it is. So where's 7 at? There we go. Got 2 more to go. We are. And 9. Output pin 10. There we go. That's the last one, I think. Okay, so we have what should be positive running to all our LEDs, ground running to all our LEDs. Now we got to do Tinkercad stuff. A lot of times when you copy paste, the LEDs don't plug in all the way. So I'm just going through and checking them. Then we're double checking the resistors. Again, these same steps are kind of good in a real project too. If you're ever having a problem or troubleshooting, you just go back and double check all of your components are attached properly. And it doesn't look like we have any positive off of the bottom side. So let's see what happens now. So we now have a decade counter that's cycling through, hopefully all of the LEDs, and they are in order. So we're controlling individually. We can't light two at a time, but we can light an individual LED one at a time through a single pin of the Arduino. The only code we're running is a blink command. So is there any times when you might find that this would be useful in your sketch, in your project? Double checking everything here. Got some comments I was referring to. Let's see here. Imagine I don't know anything. Why did you change the color of the wires to black and red? So my personal preference is I usually run black wires to all my grounding sources and then red wires to all my voltage sources. So if I'm syncing the current, then I run the black wires. If I'm setting current, then I run the red wires. And it's just more or less for visual. I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter what colored wires are, but it's just like when you get in a habit of something and you kind of just stick with the habit because of that. Same way with all these blue wires that I have run here. I could run a different color for each wire. It doesn't really matter, but as long as I connect them one at a time, I should have knowledge of where each wires ran. So I connect this wire, I double check it. I move to the next wire, I double check it. It's all a set of processes. You do things in certain order. Same way with like somebody was pointing out earlier, I could have resistors on the ground side or the positive side. I have them on the positive side this time. But 90% of the time I'll have them on the grounding leg and it's just a habit. It doesn't really make a difference, but not in this circuit anyway. It doesn't make a difference. But the habit of it is to, whichever way you're used to it, that way when you look at your project, you can clearly see whether the resistor is connected properly or not because your habit is to have all the resistors connected to negative or vice versa. Did that answer your question, demo? No problem. So overall, this project is more or less complete. I am going to share a link to the project if anybody would like to follow along and mess with what you can do. Some obvious things you can do if you play with it a little bit is you can see if we actually have one here. Seven. Nope, don't have one there. Pretty sure we have a 7-segment display here in Tinkercad. I could be wrong. Yeah, we do. Guess they use number 7. You can use a 7-segment display and use a decade counter to light up your 7-segment display, but there is a catch. You can't, I mean, you can run one wire directly to each one of the 7-segment displays, but remember, it's only going to light one at a time. So with a little bit, and I'll leave this for you guys if you want to tackle it and try it out, with a little bit of wiring finesse and a few extra parts, you can get the 7-segment display to count in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, even though the decade counter is only driving one single pin. If you want to practice that and tackle it, that's more than welcome on your part. That'll probably be part of another event. Some other things you can do is you technically can read 10 different analog sensors or devices using only 2 pins. You use the decade counter and a single input pin on the analog on your Arduino. So if you do the math, you can technically have 50 analog pins reading off of only, I guess it would be 10 pins, 5 for input and 5 for output. But you can even get away from the 5 for output. You can still go with 1 output and 5 inputs. Hold on a second. Any comments, questions, thoughts? Okay, so
Sorry, Medadash.
go right ahead.
Sorry. Could you give an advice of a real or a scenario where it can be or could be applicable to use a decade counter for a project or something?
So there's, as an example, you can use decade counters to drive sequential LEDs or anything that you need actual order in. If you want a real life scenario, I'll tell you, before we had microcontrollers, I made a digital clock made out of a bunch of 7-segment displays, just like this one here, a bunch of decade counters, and no crystal or nothing. I literally just ran the frequency off of our 60 hertz voltage off of the wall. And so the 60 hertz voltage off of the wall is what I use to cycle the LEDs. And so with straight logic, a handful of components, I was able to make a digital 7-segment display clock. And it kept good time, actually. I think after like a week, it was off like 15 seconds or 20 seconds. So it actually kept good time for a 7-day count with no microcontroller, no anything actually running it. All it was doing was cycling off of the 60 hertz cycle. In the United States, we have 60 hertz cycle off of the mains voltage. Back over to demo. How do we tackle a project if we don't know it's possible? So, very good question. If you remember, I don't know if you was here at the very beginning. When you're working on a project, how I work on mine, if it's a medium-sized project, is I make pseudocode. And so usually at the beginning of the project, because that way the code's already with the project itself, you can do a slash and a star, drop down a couple lines and do a star slash. And anything you put inside of this area, it'll not be read by the Arduino. So you could type in, as an example, hello world. And if we fire up the code, it shouldn't give any errors. Yeah, see, no errors. But if we remove those, there, see, it doesn't like it. It's got errors all over the place. So, one thing that I do is I write pseudocode inside my code. And that's what I always, if you ever hear me helping somebody, I refer to it as pseudocode. So, let's see if I could clear this. Okay, good, it cleared. So, some things I would do is like, as an example, Um, let's do an example of a weather station. Okay, so my weather station needs to keep time. So I need a real clock. So we need to keep time. What else do we need to do? We need to read temperature. So then humidity, and you can just keep doing this. Until you have all the different areas of your project isolated. And the interesting part about that is if you keep to your notes, that'll usually break down into individual functions. So if we was to do some more pseudocode, just to give you a quick example, we would create a function. Let's say that we want it to be a void. So we create a void, and we'll call this temp, T-E-M-P, and then we create a function, and everything inside the temp function will have to do with all temperature. You take your readings, whatever it all you need to do inside there. And how you access this code is inside your loop. When you want to call that function, you simply type in temp, T-E-M-P, the name of the function. And if you're not passing any data into the function, then that's all it would be. And if you actually, let's see if this will actually run. Yeah, see, there's no errors in this because there's nothing actually happening in the temp. But if we put a comment here, did I get my period in there? Yeah, I did. And we will say, so if we do this, then every time this function is ran, it'll hop inside of this function and print inside the temp function. P-R-I-N-T, I got a misspelling, P-R-I-L-N. Let's open up the serial monitor, clear it so we don't have anything on there. And if we run it, oh, it doesn't like something. Hold on a second. S-E-R-I-A-L-R-I. Oh, I forgot got the quotation marks. There we go. If you look, every time that function's ran, it executes anything inside the temp function. So every time, let's clear this again. Every time you see this pop up, this loop has looped one whole time. So if you add it up, that's going to be 1 second. And if you look, we're getting about 1 print per second. So this is a working function. But if you do that for each one, and that's our temp. So if we actually did that for our temp, that one's accomplished. And then you do another one for your timekeeping, and you accomplish that in its own function. And then your humidity, and so on and so forth. What you end up with is a group of functions that are in here that are really easy to debug. You're having a problem? Well, you've isolated down to one small block of code, a function. And if you're having, interference between them, then you can isolate where it's happening at in your code. It's really easy to debug and to get down to where you want. One more question. When you're done, please. Oh, you're enjoying it. Well, good. Um, any other questions while I'm here?
Yeah, that's the reason why I sent the thingy message. Made a dash.
Alrighty, go right ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen just very briefly because you mentioned about a real life application on how one can go about using a decade counter and stuff. So you also gave an example of one of your projects that you did where you made a clock and stuff. So I was just thinking the same thing because I actually designed a clock project for one of my school projects, actually. I'll just share that with you very quickly because
Right.
in my case,
We're looking at Chris's screen if anybody's interested. Go ahead, Chris.
so in my case, I use the shift register instead, but I'm just trying to visually think of how I could have used a decade counter instead of a shift register. So, okay, I'll just explain what's going on here because there's so many wires and colors and all that stuff. So, I've got a potentiometer here. I've got the potentiometer is going to be for the LCD display. Then I've got a bunch of LEDs. The LEDs are actually going to represent a digital clock system where blue would represent the hours, red LEDs will represent minutes, and yellow LEDs will represent seconds. And and I've got and I'm using a shift register basically to sort of like alternate between the LEDs and all that stuff and things like that. Then the push buttons are just for controls. So if you can see on the description here, set hours, set minutes, then start or resets basically. So obviously, like there are more stuff that I could have added to it, but well, this is just what I just went for instead. And the piezo would act as an alarm where every hour the alarm, the piezo buzzes basically. Just bear with me because it can be a bit slow with Tinkercad, gets a bit laggy and stuff. So I'm currently from the UK and my time right now is 2:40 a.m. So let me see if I can try to beat it to 2:41. So you can see the LEDs are alternating,
They're
and that's
changing.
because they're changing here because it's actually counting the number in binary, basically.
Gotcha. So you basically created an LED binary clock,
Yes,
and you're using the digital clock to, obviously represent and set and stuff like that.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. It's not going to be a good simulation because, like I said, Tinkercad can be very laggy. Maybe it's just my system. I don't know.
no, it's
Um,
it's Tinkercad. It when it's simulating the clock cycles and stuff, it gets buggy. It's a free software, so I mean, you get what you get.
yeah, but it's a very good thingy. Anyways, so yeah, this is it. This is what it does, and you can see that the yellow LEDs are actually alternating. So 18 seconds, 19 seconds in binary, then 42 seconds, which is the red LED in binary, and 2 o'clock hours,
In
which is
binary too.
represented in binary too. And the
Right.
green LEDs are just separators, basically the separators that separate the digital clock formats and stuff. So my question to you then, Metadash, is in this case scenario, how would I go about using the decade counter for this if I chose not to use a shift register?
First of all, excellent project.
Thank
Very
you.
well organized. It's
Thank
broken
you.
down in nice segments, and you have multiple outputs, and that's another good sign is always having multiple outputs. So, if you actually look in on this chip, which each chip's different, this is the 4017. It's one of the older ones. If we look at, okay, this is our clock
Are
enable.
we looking at your screen now?
Should have, yes.
Okay, let me mute my mic.
Alrighty. So if you look at this chip, we're not using this one and this one. And these would be the two that you would need. So if you are dealing with only 8 LEDs, we're like lighting up 10 in my scenario, just because I'm connecting one to each pin. But if you're only lighting up a certain number, in your case it'd be 8 or 4 or 6 or whatever you need, you can actually utilize these two extra pins, and it's really simple. This pin is pin 10, so let's actually tie onto it. If we was to connect pin 10, which means as soon as this cycles over to 10, it does something, and we put it to the reset. There it is, to the reset. So we take the pin 10 to the reset, then every time this hits 10, it's going to reset the decade counter. Well, in itself isn't going to do much, but if you move that over to, let's say, pin 5 or pin 6, this case pin 9, here's 5, then every time it counts up to 5, it hits 5 and resets this counter. Now, how can you carry that over? Let's say to, like if you look at numbers, you have the ones column, the tens column, the hundreds, the thousands. The chip's also set up for that. If you look at the other pin we did not use, this is called an inverted output. When this pin goes high, this pin can go low. And what you could do is similar to what you did on yours. You can daisy chain multiple decade counters together. So every time that this counted up to 10, you would then drive this pin on a clock cycle, and this one would increase by 1. And then the whole thing continues. This one counts to 10 again, and then once it hits 10 again, then this one will say 2. This one counts up to 10, and this one goes 3. And so now you're cycling through that way. This is for a count of 10. If you only need 8, then like I said, all you have to do is tie one of the other pins over to the reset pin and this pin, and what it'll cause is every time it hits 8, this pin will cycle up 1, and this chip will clear itself, and you'll start over from 0 again. Does that follow along with what you was asking?
It really, really, really does, and I think you've explained it very well. But I think I would actually maybe work on a project on this aspect instead. Then I would just use like maybe 2 or 3 decade counters and actually test it for myself.
Absolutely. But if you actually
Thank you.
look, it's got them, well, your ground's over here, but it has the reset pin, and there's also, see, this is the clock enable. I feel like I'm missing one. I could be wrong, but I feel like I'm missing one. But anyway, there's one pin. It might be the inverted output. When it goes to 5, the inverted output goes low, and then when it counts up to 10, the inverted output goes high, and then when it counts to 5 again, it goes low. So this actually cycles halfway through the cycle also if you can use the low output. Obviously, for a clock cycle, you need a low and then a high. But if you just needed a low halfway through the cycle for some reason, I'm pretty sure you could pull off of this pin to accomplish that also. So with a decade counter, you got a lot of scope you can play with. And there's nothing wrong with I can't remember what you said you had, but a driver either. There's nothing wrong with either one. I just chose the decade counter today because not a lot of people mess with it, and it's a really useful little chip, especially if you connect it with other things and utilize it. Is there any other questions, comments, or remarks? Anybody? Well, I was planning on around 1 hour for the event, and we are 50 minutes in, right around 50 minutes. So I don't have a problem. Close it out early. If anybody has any questions or anything or comments for the next event, you're more than welcome to let me know. If you want to do something with an event, I believe you can talk to Eli. He's, I think, managing them right now, and set something up. If there's anything in particular you'd like to focus on for a future event, you can let Eli or myself know, and I could try to get something drawn up for you guys. Did I miss anything, Eli? Does that sound correct to you?
Yep, that sounds all good. I got nothing more to say if you're done.
All right. Well, I think we had a pretty productive event. It's starting off at a lower level in case anybody like somebody was mentioning, individuals may not know how a breadboard works and stuff like that. So we're just starting off with the basics. And this will go to a live Arduino or microcontroller and a live cam when we get to a level that Tinkercad can no longer deal with our shenanigans. Then we'll move this into my lab, and if it ain't too cold in there, and I'll get me a live cam streaming for you guys. But for now, it just seemed like it served a purpose rather than just dragging everything out. And if anybody has anything they want to add, feel free to let me know. Oh, hold on a second. Got a message.
Actually, Dash, I wanted to actually explain to yourself and Eli and I think Blue Light Show. I think the Eli and Blue Light Show hosted today's event or something. I really don't know how it really works on the server. But anyways, I'm working on a school project actually, building a robot car. Now, obviously, I could, achieve this with Tinkercad, but I opted out of this because I wanted to build it with an actual Arduino and all that stuff. So, yeah, I've planned out, the peripherals that, that, you know, would be required for me to achieve in this and stuff. But um, I don't know if it's something I really, really don't know how it would work with the events and stuff and things like this. But um, I don't know if it's something that we can maybe try to achieve, like maybe this month or maybe within the next 2 months and stuff and things like that. So while I'm working on it and stuff, and if we would be hosting events like this again, then I could, demonstrate what I have achieved and all that stuff. And it's really nice as well to have someone like yourself, mentoring me on this project and stuff and things like that. Because I think with the one that I showed you, the project that I showed you with clock and stuff, I really had fun doing it. One of the community moderators, actually, who isn't online right now, but he's a very good friend of mine, Mindaugas. He's not online at the moment, but yeah, he was actually the one who actually mentored me on that project and helped me with the coding and all that stuff and things like that. So yeah, it's something that I'm working on. I'm discussing this with him, and I have spoken to Anon Engineering as well about this. He is aware of this as well. So yeah, it would be maybe kind of nice. I don't know if the people here on today's events would. I don't know if it's something that would pique their interest, or I really don't know. But it would be nice.
Absolutely. Like I said, if you contact, I believe Eli's handling it. If not, I'm throwing him under the bus. So poor Eli. But
No,
last
no, no,
I
no.
know, Eli was handling it. Yeah, just talk with him, and I'm sure he'll get you settled up. If you need any help, okay. So I just basically made like a quick little spreadsheet, not a spreadsheet, presentation. And so that's kind of what I use for my outline. You need some sort of structure, but other than that, I think I think pretty much anything grabs people's interest. We got a lot of people dealing with robotics, just the basics, dealing with, more advanced stuff. I know port manipulation. It's not my strong suit, but I can do it. And so I for one would be interested. I'll be there. I'll be at the event if you get it set up.
Yeah, for the most part, right now we're trying to mainly follow like a helper only type of event structure. So I would say reach out to ModMail, DM ModMail, and then we can possibly work something out. But I can't give you a direct answer here.
There you go. Anybody else comments? Well, I hope you guys liked tonight's event. And if you want to see more, then just let me know. And I'm going to try to continue this project for where it's currently at. We'll try to move forward with more advanced stuff from here. So if you want to follow along, then just keep an eye on the events. Me personally, I try to schedule all my stuff on like a Saturday evening. So most of my stuff will be on a Saturday, but I'm sure anybody else's will be whatever day they prefer. And so I think if there's nothing else anybody wants to add or Eli wants to say, I think we're concluded. Oh, got some comments here. Hold on. Very eventful today. Okay, no problem. Well, you're very welcome, and I hope everybody enjoyed the night's event.
God asked what days and times are the events. Events are going to be just scheduled randomly whenever helpers have the time, and we're planning to have like some farther, more in the future notifications for when events are planned instead of the day before, like today. So, yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. Other than that, if Matterdash, you're good, then
Yep,
that's about it.
I am good to go. I got 6 minutes early.
6 minutes early.
Hmm That's pretty good for me. I usually run over.
At this point, the event's going to probably conclude. So whoever is free to talk, and this channel will just be locked in probably a couple hours or whatever. But it's a free channel.
Awesome.
Thank you for your time and really nice presentation.
Thank you for attending. It was nice having a nice turnout tonight. Didn't know how it was gonna go with the weekends. You know, a lot of people are doing stuff on weekends, so.
Yeah, are you planning on hosting these events at different time zones as well, like time spans? No.
I'm sure it's right now we're just getting things started, but I know we have helpers in a diverse amount of time zones, so I'm sure, you know, like now would probably be their nighttime or midnight for them. So, you know, I'm sure it'll change according to different helpers.
Yeah, adding on top of that, most of our helpers are from around the world. So hopefully there'll be more events scheduled in the future after this one kind of got us started. And yeah.
Yeah, nice. Thank you.
So now, if anybody needs any help, I'm here. If that's usually what I do in the evening. So if anybody has any help or just wants to uh pick at a problem a little bit, I'm usually around. There we
I'm gonna have to go now, but